Welcome to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button so you don't miss any more shocking and captivating stories. Enjoy watching. When Calder Rowan came home early on a Thursday night, he didn't expect the quiet to feel so loud. He had left the office at 6:12 p.m., a small rebellion against a week that had been grinding him down. His last meeting was canceled, and for once, he didn't stay behind to pretend productivity mattered more than going home. He imagined surprising his wife, maybe opening a bottle of wine they'd been saving since last winter, maybe sitting on the couch with their knees touching in that easy, unspoken way they used to have. Instead, when he pulled into the driveway of their two-story house in Evanston, Illinois, he noticed something off immediately. There were too many cars, not a party amount, not chaos, just deliberate. 5 vehicles, neatly parked, none blocking the mailbox. A silver Subaru he didn't recognize. A black Tesla with out-of-state plates. Someone had thought about spacing. Calder stayed in his car for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled, his hands still on the steering wheel. He told himself this was nothing. Maybe Nora had invited friends over. Maybe he'd forgotten. That happened sometimes. He worked too much. He knew that. Still, he checked his phone. No messages. No, "Hey, we're having people over tonight." No calendar reminder he'd ignored. He stepped out of the car and the sound reached him before he even opened the door. Laughter. Adult laughter. The kind that came with wine glasses and practiced ease. It floated through the open living room windows, warm and social. And for a second, Calder felt like a stranger outside his own life. He unlocked the front door. The smell hit him first. Roasted garlic, expensive cheese, perfume that wasn't Nora's. Inside, the lights were dimmed to a soft amber, candles lit along the mantel. Music played low, something jazzy, intentional. And then he saw them. There were 8 people total, 4 couples. Except Calder wasn't one of them. Nora stood near the kitchen island, her hair styled in a way she usually reserved for weddings or client dinners. She wore a deep green dress Calder had bought her 2 years ago after she'd said, "I'd never buy this for myself." Her hand rested lightly, too lightly, on the arm of a man Calder had never seen before. The man leaned in as she laughed, his body angled toward hers in a way that spoke of familiarity, comfort, practice. For a moment, no one noticed Calder. He stood just inside the doorway, keys still in his hand, his coat half off his shoulders. The room felt tilted, like gravity had subtly changed direction. Then Nora looked up. Her smile didn't vanish, but it faltered. Just enough. "Calder," she said, a beat too late. "You're home early." Every eye turned to him. The man beside her straightened but didn't move away. Calder forced a polite expression onto his face, the kind he used in meetings when someone said something stupid, and he had to pretend it made sense. "Looks like I missed the memo," he said calmly. A woman near the couch laughed awkwardly. "Oh, this must be the surprise guest." Nora cleared her throat. "Everyone, this is my husband. My husband. Not Calder. Not your home. Just a label, like something she'd momentarily forgotten to mention." The man beside her extended his hand. "Ethan," he said, "nice to finally meet you." "Finally." Calder shook his hand. Ethan's grip was confident, unhurried, the kind of handshake that assumed belonging. "What's the occasion?" Calder asked, glancing around the room. Nora answered too quickly. "Just a couple's night, you know, friends." Calder nodded slowly. Couples. He looked again. Everyone was paired. Bodies leaned inward. Shared glances. Familiar rhythms. And somehow, every seat was taken. He smiled. "I'll just grab a drink." In the kitchen, his hands shook as he poured whiskey into a glass. He watched the liquid slosh, amber against crystal, grounding himself in the small physics of it. No one followed him. The laughter resumed behind him, a touch louder, as if to cover something. He replayed the scene in his head, searching for innocence. Maybe he was reading too much into it. Maybe Ethan was just a coworker. Maybe the hand on the arm meant nothing. But Calder had always been observant. That was his curse and his skill. He noticed the way Nora didn't look at him the way she used to. The way her phone never left her face down on the table anymore. The way she'd started going for walks after dinner, earbuds in, unreachable. He'd told himself it was stress, work, life. Now, standing alone in his kitchen while his wife hosted a night that didn't include him, the excuses tasted thin. Ethan laughed again, something low and intimate. Nora touched his wrist this time. Calder took a sip of whiskey and felt it burn. He didn't make a scene. He stayed. He listened. He watched. He answered questions about his job with rehearsed ease. When someone asked how long he and Nora had been married, she answered for him. 12 years, she said, smiling at Ethan. Time flies. Later, as people began to leave, Nora kissed him on the cheek like a hostess thanking a guest. "We'll talk later," she whispered. Calder nodded. But as he lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling while Nora slept beside him, one thought anchored itself in his chest and refused to move. Whatever that night had been, it wasn't an accident. And if it had a name, he was going to find out what it was. Calder didn't confront Nora the next morning. That alone surprised him. He woke before his alarm, the room still blue with early light, her back turned to him, breathing steady. For a brief, almost humiliating moment, he considered pretending none of it had happened, sliding back into routine, letting familiarity smooth over discomfort like it always had. But something had shifted. A quiet internal click, like a door locking behind him. Instead of speaking, he watched. At breakfast, Nora moved through the kitchen with practiced normalcy. She hummed softly as she poured coffee. She asked if he wanted eggs. She mentioned a client meeting downtown. Her voice carried no guilt, only efficiency. Calder studied her, the way he studied data at work. Not emotionally, but methodically. She didn't ask how he'd felt about the night before. That was the first mark. On his drive to the office, Calder replayed the previous evening in fragments. Not the obvious moments. The hand on Ethan's arm, the couple's configuration, but the smaller details. The way Nora had positioned herself between Ethan and the doorway, subtly blocking Calder's view. The way Ethan had known where the bathroom was without asking. The way Nora had said finally, without realizing it. Patterns didn't lie. People did. Calder was a systems analyst by trade. He specialized in identifying inefficiencies, predicting failure points, tracing outcomes back to overlooked assumptions. His colleagues joked that he could smell inconsistencies like ozone before a storm. And right now, his marriage was producing all the wrong signals. Over the next 2 weeks, he didn't change his behavior. That was intentional. He came home when he always did. He kissed Nora goodbye in the mornings. He asked about her day. He let her believe the night had passed without consequence. But he paid attention. Nora started locking her phone. Not with a pin, Face ID, but she angled it away from him now. Screen always down. Notifications silent. When messages came in, her thumb hovered before she responded, as if calculating. She took more showers at night. Longer ones. Music playing loudly enough to mask thought. She started wearing perfume on days she worked from home. Calder didn't accuse. He collected. One Tuesday evening, he stayed late on purpose, parked down the street and watched their house from his car. At 8:14 p.m., a black Tesla pulled into the driveway. Ethan. Calder didn't approach. He didn't photograph it. He didn't storm inside like the betrayed husbands in bad movies. He wrote down the time in his notes app and drove away. That night, Nora texted him, "Don't wait up, headache." Calder replied, "Okay, sleep well." The lies were small. That was the most dangerous part. He began noticing how often Nora mentioned the group, the same couples from that night, dinners, game nights, a shared hiking trip he was too busy to attend. She framed it as social expansion, like they were finally building a community. Calder Googled Ethan. Ethan Blake, 42, recently divorced, real estate development, lived 3 neighborhoods over, no children. Calder stared at Ethan's LinkedIn photo longer than he wanted to admit. Clean smile, casual confidence, the kind of man who moved through life assuming doors would open. He wondered how long. Not in an explosive, dramatic way. Just a dull curiosity that gnawed at him while he brushed his teeth, while he sat in traffic, while Nora rested her feet on his lap and scrolled through her phone without looking at him. Calder started sleeping less. At work, he made mistakes. Small ones, but noticeable. His manager asked if everything was okay. Calder nodded. "I'm just recalibrating," he said. That weekend, Nora told him she was going to a wine tasting with friends. She left at 4, wearing the green dress again. Calder waited 10 minutes, then followed. The tasting never happened. He watched from across the street as she entered Ethan's townhouse. No hesitation. No checking her surroundings. Like someone coming home. Calder sat in his car for nearly an hour. His chest felt tight, but his mind was eerily calm. Observational. Detached. This wasn't rage. This was confirmation. He drove home and, for the first time, allowed himself to feel the weight of it. Not as a cinematic betrayal, but as a slow erasure. 12 years reduced to convenience, to scheduling, to the quiet assumption that he wouldn't look too closely. That night, he didn't text her. He didn't call. She came home at 10:47 p.m., smelling like wine and Ethan's cologne. "I had too much to drink," she said lightly. Calder nodded. "I figured," she paused. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," he said, turning back to the TV. But inside, something hardened. Calder began preparing, not for confrontation, but for truth. He requested phone records under the guise of a billing error. He checked shared expenses. He noticed hotel charges split between accounts he didn't recognize. Still, he waited. Because Calder didn't want a confession. He wanted facts. And when he finally spoke, he wanted there to be no room for denial. No room for Nora to rewrite history. No room for Ethan to smile. Calder chose the night carefully. It was a Wednesday. Ordinary enough to avoid suspicion. Heavy enough to matter. Rain tapped against the windows in soft, irregular rhythms, the kind that made the house feel sealed off from the world. Nora came home just after 7, setting her keys down with deliberate quiet, as if the air itself might be listening. She was in a good mood. That was the first thing Calder noticed. "Long day?" he asked, standing at the sink, drying a glass. "Productive," she said. "We should celebrate soon. Maybe a weekend away." Calder almost laughed. Instead, he gestured to the dining table. "Can we talk first?" Something in his tone must have registered. Nora hesitated, then nodded. She sat across from him, crossing her legs, folding her hands, prepared, composed. Calder didn't start with accusations. He slid his phone across the table. On the screen was a simple list. Dates, times, addresses, a timeline, Ethan's townhouse, hotel bookings, shared Uber receipts, phone call durations. Nora stared at it longer than Calder expected. Then she exhaled, slowly. "You went through my things," she said. Calder tilted his head. "That's your opening line?" Her eyes sharpened. "You invaded my privacy." "No," he said calmly. "I noticed patterns. You left trails." Silence settled between them, thick and unfamiliar. "How long?" Calder asked. Nora looked away. "That's not an answer." "Since spring," she said finally. "March." Calder nodded, absorbing it. Spring. Renewal. Of course. Was the couple's night your idea? He asked. She hesitated. Ethan's. Calder smiled faintly. Bold. Nora's composure began to crack. It wasn't supposed to be like this. That's what people say when it's exactly like this, Calder replied. She stood, pacing now. You were never there. You were always working, always tired. Ethan listens. Calder remained seated. I listened. You just stopped talking to me. That's not fair. Neither is this. The rain intensified, pounding the roof like a countdown. Do you love him? Calder asked. Nora stopped pacing. I don't know, she said. I love how I feel with him. Calder felt something twist, not break, but stretch thin. Do the others know? He asked. She swallowed. Yes, all of them. The dinners, the laughter, the knowing glances. They smiled at me, Calder said quietly. Shook my hand. Nora's voice dropped. I didn't want to hurt you. Calder stood now. You curated a life where I was the only one who didn't know. That takes effort. She reached for him. He stepped back. I'm done, he said. Not angry. Just done. What does that mean? She asked, panic rising. It means I already spoke to a lawyer. Her face drained of color. And, Calder continued, I sent Ethan's ex-wife the messages he thought were deleted. Nora's mouth opened, closed. Why? She whispered. Calder met her eyes. Because I won't be the only casualty. The fallout was quiet, but relentless. Ethan backed away. The group dissolved. Nora moved out within a week. The house felt empty, but honest. Calder slept better. Months later, the divorce finalized. No dramatic court battles, just signatures and silence. On a crisp autumn morning, Calder packed the last of Nora's things into boxes and left them by the door. On top, he placed the green dress. He didn't feel victorious. He felt free. The first thing Calder noticed after Nora left was the absence of sound. Not silence. There was still traffic outside, the hum of the refrigerator, the house settling at night, but the specific noise of managing someone else. No footsteps to anticipate. No phone calls to overhear and pretend not to notice. No emotional weather to prepare for. Just space. The divorce finalized on a Monday afternoon in late October. Calder signed the papers in a small conference room that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old carpet. The lawyer slid the documents toward him with professional neutrality, as if this were a mortgage adjustment, not the formal end of 12 years. Any questions? She asked. Calder shook his head. No. And he meant it. Nora didn't look at him when she signed. Her hand trembled slightly. That was the only visible crack. When it was done, she gathered her coat and left without a goodbye. Calder sat there for a moment longer than necessary, staring at the empty chair across from him. He didn't feel relief the way people described it. What he felt was clarity, sharp, clean, almost cold. The small revenge he'd enacted had already done its work. Ethan's ex-wife had filed a formal complaint against him for violating a separation agreement tied to shared property. Nothing criminal. Just enough to complicate his life. Deals delayed, reputation dented, subtle, lasting damage. The social circle Nora had tried to build collapsed quietly. Couples' nights stopped. Invitations dried up. People who had smiled too easily avoided eye contact in public now. Nora called him once. It was late, nearly midnight. I didn't think it would end like this, she said, her voice smaller than he remembered. Calder didn't ask what this meant. It ended when you decided I didn't deserve the truth, he replied. She cried. He listened. He didn't comfort. After that, there were no more calls. Winter came early that year. Calder filled the house with small, intentional changes. He repainted the bedroom, donated furniture, moved his workspace into the sunlit spare room Nora had once claimed for yoga and never used. He started running in the mornings. Not to escape, but to arrive somewhere quieter inside himself. People at work noticed the difference. He spoke less, but with more precision. He smiled rarely, but genuinely. One evening in December, Calder hosted a dinner. Just friends. No couples. No performance. Simple food. Honest conversation. As he washed dishes later, standing alone at the sink where he'd once dried a glass, while his marriage unraveled behind him, Calder felt something unexpected. Not happiness. Stability. He understood now that betrayal wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was carefully scheduled, socially approved, smiling. And survival wasn't dramatic either. It was waking up one day and realizing you trusted your own perception again. Calder turned off the lights, locking the door behind him. The house held his footsteps easily now. No lies left to echo.